Imagine you're sitting at your desk on a Tuesday afternoon, doing absolutely nothing special. Maybe eating lunch, maybe scrolling through your phone, and you check your investment account just out of habit. And you notice something. While you were sitting there, doing nothing, your portfolio just made more money in that one afternoon than you made at work that entire day. No extra hours, no side hustle, no stress, just money growing on top of money while you lived your life. That feeling, that moment, that's not luck. That's not something reserved for rich people or finance bros on YouTube with sports cars. That's what happens when your portfolio crosses a very specific threshold. And today, I want to tell you exactly what that threshold is, why it works, and what's standing between you and that moment right now. My name is Nico, and I spend way too much time thinking about money so that you don't have to. If you're new here, this channel is about real, practical, no-fluff financial advice for regular people. People with regular jobs, real bills, and big dreams that feel just slightly out of reach. If that's you, hit subscribe right now because we drop new videos every week, and I genuinely think this one could change the way you see your financial life. Drop a like too. It takes 2 seconds and it helps more people find this content. All right, let's talk about the $300,000 milestone. Here's something that most people never hear, and it's honestly one of the most important ideas in personal finance. There is a specific point in your investing journey where the math fundamentally changes, where the game shifts, where your money stops being something you're building and starts being something that builds itself. That number, for most people, is right around $300,000. And I want to explain exactly why, because once you understand what's actually happening at that level, you'll never look at your portfolio the same way again. But first, let's talk about where most people actually are, because the uncomfortable truth is that the average American has almost nothing invested. According to Federal Reserve data, the median retirement savings for people between 35 and 44, that's prime working age adults, is around $45,000. The median, meaning half of people in that age range have less than $45,000 saved for the future. And the average person in their 20s, often closer to zero, sometimes negative when you factor in student loans and credit card debt. So when I say $300,000, I understand that for a lot of people watching this, that number sounds almost fictional. It sounds like something that happens to other people. I want you to hold on to that feeling, because I'm going to explain exactly why it's more achievable than you think, and exactly what's pulling you away from it every single day. Let's start with the math, because the math is where the magic is. Most long-term investors use what's called the 10% average annual return. That's the rough historical average of the S&P 500 over long periods of time. Now, on a $10,000 portfolio, 10% is $1,000 a year. That's $83 a month your money is generating. That's fine. That's a nice dinner once a month, maybe. It doesn't feel like freedom. On a $50,000 portfolio, 10% is $5,000 a year. That's $416 a month. Getting better. That could cover a car payment or a chunk of your groceries. But here's where it gets interesting. On a $300,000 portfolio, 10% is $30,000 a year. That's $2,500 a month. Every single month in a typical market year, your money is generating what many people in this country would consider a solid part-time income, and you didn't have to do a single thing to earn it. You didn't clock in, you didn't take meetings, you just owned assets. And that number keeps growing, because next year, you're not earning 10% on $300,000, you're earning it on $330,000, and the year after that on $363,000. This is the compounding snowball, and at $300,000, it finally has enough mass to roll on its own. There's a concept I think about a lot, and it's called the crossover point. It's the moment in your financial life when your investment returns, not your salary, not your side hustle, become large enough to meaningfully impact your actual lifestyle. Most financial independence movements define this as the point where your investment income covers your expenses, but I'd argue there's a psychological crossover that happens much earlier. Somewhere around $300,000, most people start to genuinely feel it. They start seeing monthly or quarterly gains that are bigger than a paycheck.
They start to understand viscerally that their money is working harder than they are. And that feeling rewires your brain around wealth. It stops being abstract. It stops being a retirement number on a screen. It becomes real. Now, let me tell you what I've seen happen to people before they get there, because this is where the real story is. I've seen people, smart, hardworking, well-intentioned people, spend a decade making decent money and arrive at 40 with almost nothing invested. And it's not because they didn't care. It's because of something I call the lifestyle trap. Every time their income went up, their spending went up with it. New car, bigger apartment, nicer vacations, better restaurants, more subscriptions, more stuff. Their life looked more successful on the outside every year, and yet the gap between who they were and who they could have been financially was widening every single month. Economists call this lifestyle inflation. I call it the slow, quiet wealth killer that nobody talks about at dinner parties.
Here's the psychology of it, because I think this matters more than the math. When we earn more money, we don't just spend more, we redefine our identity. We start to see certain things as normal. A $60,000 car starts to feel reasonable when you make $150,000 a year. A $3,000 rent feels justified when your friends are renting in the same neighborhood. We don't compare ourselves to where we were. We compare ourselves to the people around us. And because lifestyle inflation is contagious, because we are deeply wired to normalize our peer group's spending, most people never stop to ask the one question that could save them. What is this actually costing me in the future?
Let me give you a number that genuinely shocked me when I first calculated it. Let's say at 28 years old, you're making decent money and you decide to upgrade your car. Instead of keeping your paid-off $15,000 car, you go lease something for $600 a month. Over 3 years, that's $21,600 in lease payments. You get nothing at the end. But here's the real cost. If you had invested that $600 a month instead, over 30 years at 10% annual return, that one decision, that one car upgrade, cost you over $136,000 in future wealth. One car, one decision, $136,000. And most people are making 5 or 6 of those decisions every single year without even realizing it.
The alternative isn't suffering. It's not driving a rusted-out 1998 Honda and never going on vacation. The alternative is prioritizing investment above lifestyle expansion, at least until you hit a level where your portfolio can carry some of the weight. The people who reach $300,000 fastest are almost never the people with the highest income. They're the people who, for a period of time, decided that building the machine mattered more than showing off what they had. They drove the older car. They stayed in the smaller apartment. Not forever, just long enough for the math to start working in their favor.
And your 20s and early 30s matter in a way that almost nothing else does. I know that sounds like something your parents would say, and I know it's easy to dismiss, but consider this. $1 invested at 25 is worth roughly $17 at 65, with a 7% return. $1 invested at 35 is worth about $8. Same dollar, same market. But the 25-year-old's dollar does more than twice the work just because of time. Every year you wait doesn't just cost you 1 year of growth. It costs you decades of compounding on top of that growth. That's the thing about compound interest. The early years look boring and small, and the late years look explosive and almost unreal. But you cannot get the late years without surviving the early ones.
So what does the path to $300,000 actually look like for a real person? If you're 25 years old and you can invest $1,000 a month, and yes, I know that's not easy, but hear me out, you'd hit $300,000 in roughly 13 to 14 years, depending on market returns. That means you'd be crossing this milestone in your late 30s. At that point, your portfolio is generating around $2,500 a month on its own. You've got 2 or 3 decades of working life left, and your money is already running alongside you like a coworker that never takes sick days.
If you can invest $1,500 a month, you get there in under 10 years. That's a decade of focused, intentional decisions that fundamentally changes what the second half of your financial life looks like.
The shift I want you to make isn't just in your spreadsheet, it's in your identity. Because here's the real secret about people who build wealth. At some point, they stop seeing themselves as someone trying to save money and start seeing themselves as an investor. They stop asking, can I afford this? And start asking, what does buying this cost me in the future? That identity shift is what makes the habit stick. That's what makes them skip the upgrade when everyone around them is upgrading. Not because they can't have it, because they understand at a bone-deep level that the portfolio is worth more than the lifestyle signal.
You might be watching this right now with $5,000 invested, or $50,000, or nothing at all. And the $300,000 number might feel like looking at a mountain from the base, but every mountain looks that way from the bottom. Every single person who's ever crossed that milestone was standing exactly where you are at some point, asking exactly the questions you're asking now. The math doesn't care about your past. It only cares about what you do starting today.
Start now. Increase your contributions even by $100 a month. Cut one thing that isn't actually making your life better. Open the account if you haven't. Move the number $1 further along today. Because the day will come when you're sitting somewhere ordinary, eating lunch, scrolling your phone, doing nothing special, and your account will be doing the extraordinary, and everything, genuinely everything, will feel different. If this video gave you a new way of looking at your money, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.